Hi there, Ron here, Variable Play, and welcome to another open game night with
Game
our
night.
special
Yes.
guest, Tim.
Hey,
Tim,
Tim!
Hi,
everybody.
Woohoo!
how do we, before we butcher your last name, how do we pronounce your last name?
Last name is Chuon. Super easy.
Chuon.
Chuon.
Ah,
Okay.
okay.
All right.
Okay. Chuon.
Cool.
All right.
I'll
So-
be on my job.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you for making it to the show. Yeah, Denmark is going to be sharing a couple of invites for people that were not, I didn't get the reminder for today's show. So, before we get started, I guess maybe we can just do a general introduction. Would you like to introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, so
Yes.
I would like to introduce Tim. Because Tim has a lot of. Tim is our special guest, but of course, Tim, I'm going to be asking a few more questions in a while. But we've been following you in YouTube and in Instagram, and I just learned that you also have a Medium. I guess you talked about your industry background there.
Mhm.
You also have a website, but you're mainly popular in making cinematic showcase preview. There's a couple of
How long are you
variations.
gonna go on?
They're like trailers, and every time I watch one, I hear my wallet crying just a little bit.
yes, just a little bit. And but yeah, so Tim, you are from the US, and
Yes. I'm based in like the LA area, California. Yeah, I need
Mhm.
definitely to shorten those the names for those videos. Cinematic showcases, I think. I'd be like,
I think you there was a time that you went into cinematic showcases, and then I also started seeing like cinematic showcase plus review, because
Yeah.
when you started it was really a showcase, and then it wasn't necessarily about the game, but you would be talking about like the process of how you made the video,
Mhm.
and then now it started to split. So there's a playthrough, there's a 7-minute how to play
Tutorials,
tutorial.
great videos.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's true. It's definitely evolved over the years. I feel like what's always stayed the same with that cinematic intro, and then I just mix it in with like I don't know whatever I'm kind of like into lately. I think lately right now it's like playthroughs, but I'm definitely always keeping cinematics plus like reviews. Like that's gonna keep
Right.
going along with like everything else. So-
Although I do like the other little videos. Like I was just watching right before we started the show your Shelf of Shame video.
Uh,
Oh,
that
That's some nice games. Like I have Clash of Rage also up here behind me. So,
oh,
but,
cool.
yeah, but you got like you got the steampunk sleeve, and or I think mine is a steampunk sleeve, and yours is like the dark gray one. So like
Mhm.
just seeing some of those like the tidal blades, I didn't realize it was that huge.
Yeah, it's massive. It's like half my table, which is super cool. It's crazy.
It's like, how do I even set this up so I can make a video?
Right.
Although
Like,
when you mentioned that you wanted to rent a warehouse to do the street legends,
Street Masters, yeah.
the Street Masters,
Street Masters, yeah.
I want to see it, man.
Like, hopefully I can make it happen because I still have that idea like in my head. Like when I storyboard, I usually don't write things down, but I have like the whole scene. Like it's supposed to be like a training scene with like all these props and stuff to accent like the fighters with like chains and everything. So it's supposed to be super cool, but we'll see if that happens in the future.
Oh, super looking forward.
I'll try.
So for the ones, while we have some viewers already,
People are saying hi.
Hi, everybody.
people are saying hi. So Morgan over there. So I'm gonna just. So I borrowed this. Hopefully it's
He's
okay.
stole
I
He stole
borrowed
material
this
from you.
I didn't touch it too much. I just cut it so that people can get a snippet. For the ones of our viewers who haven't seen Tim's videos, I think you probably have seen some of these in your social media stream. You saw some Kickstarter and go, oh, that looks nice, and then you just backed it. You now know who the person behind why you backed it.
Maybe a little.
All right, so a little
Here you
like
go.
pushed you over the edge. So here you go. So those are just
Excellent
two.
stuff.
There's actually so many lovely ones. I actually have another one queued here in case people still want to see some more videos. But yeah, doesn't that just make you just want to back now
Buy.
or
I want
buy
to
now
buy
or
Chai
add
Yeah.
for 2
add
right now.
add to
I
cart?
was already sold on Red Rising from the story, but everything else, like I haven't seen the art until I saw that video, and I want a copy.
Oh, and Red Rising is really good. It really grew on me too. Like as a game, it's been really good. So
And I think board games are naturally attractive already. It's been packaged and designed so that when it's on the table, it looks impressive. People are, hey, what's that? Can I try that? What's going on? When we had conventions or even our open game nights, as long as we have a nice looking game at the table, people passing by cafes, they would take a second look, and as soon as I see them, oh, you looked again. You want to try? And then I make them sit.
that's what's so
And
cool. It's like they have good table presence,
They do.
yes,
They're so nice.
yes, but especially now for online, we're a little bit more enclosed
Right.
at home. Um, it really what you are doing, and content creators similar to you, who have been doing board game photography for many years already. I think it's a great service for everyone to sort of see what else is there. And maybe this game, normally we're just used to just, okay, I'm already interested in a game, no idea, look for the review, right? But sometimes you kind of want to see the game first. You kind of want to see what's going on and how it looks. And I think these like really short snippets kind of like brings the message through just visually, and then you add a little bit more to those.
Right.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
actually, to that point that you see in the comments here below, that like I particularly don't really like seeing, let's say, like art or animation that isn't necessarily in the game itself. So seeing the actual components laid out in a perspective that I did not even think the game could look that way
Right.
sells it so
Mhm.
much more.
Oh, thank
Right.
you. Yeah, it's true too. Like when I first started, I was like, the animation, the story is cool, but I wanted to like really see what the components look like when I first started too. So that's definitely one big motivator when I did all this too. So it's nice that you think the same way. It's cool.
So
Great.
Yeah.
let's get to know Tim even more right now. So since he opened it up, we would like to ask you how did you actually start in the board game
I'm very
photography
curious.
and cinematic reviews? How did it all start? Since you
Yeah,
started
so,
already, so just go on.
Yeah, I think I'm maybe about 3 years now into it. So I've done it for 3 years now. But what the very, very first motivation for all of this was tutorials. It wasn't even like cinematics yet. It was just I want to learn how to play this game, and at the time it was only like Rodney and a few others covering it from what they played. And if they didn't cover it, it's like, oh, I gotta read through this, and I'd rather watch it. Right?
Yeah.
But then,
That's
when
Ron.
I was watching videos, it was very, it was super long, and I really wanted to like shorten it. And I was like, man, I think I kind of just want to make it and see what happens. So I started making tutorials. I tried to make it as short as I can, and then one big influencer for me was Peter McKinnon. I don't know if you know him. He's the big photographer and videographer. I followed him for a very long time, and what he did to just introduce like photography to his own niche, I wanted to bring on to board games. So I was like, you know what, I think I can do this in the board game. I can mix it into the tutorials, which is funny when you mentioned like I used to do those before, cinematics plus tutorials, and that just kind of kept evolving because I really enjoyed doing the cinematics. And then photography kind of grew along with it. Those two kind of go hand in hand. Taking thumbnail pictures, just doing kind of creative photos. I just wanted to take pictures of something that was unconventional, something that you're scrolling through Instagram. Like I just want you to just stop and see, what this board game can really look like when it's like immersed into theme. So that was definitely what motivated me first. I started off with just like many other people, just my phone, and then it kind of just evolved. And then my parents got me my first camera, and then it just grew from there. So,
were there any initial challenges that you recall, and maybe how you overcame them?
Yeah. The very first video I filmed, I look back and I kind of just want to throw up in like a brown bag. It's like it's so bad. It's going back. I think the biggest challenge was editing. Editing is such a daunting thing. Going to Premiere Pro, if you're brand new, there's so many different controls and functions and all this stuff that it just is overwhelming, and I think it's not very user friendly. So what I kind of just promised to myself is like, okay, as I go into each video, I want to learn one new thing, just one new thing, every single time. And that gets,
That's
like,
good.
really escalated every single time. Because maybe one new thing, maybe I'll do like 2 different techniques. Maybe I'll learn, 3 different transitions. And so I think that what helped me, learn a lot faster than I was hoping. So
All right.
So
Excellent.
you actually didn't start as a like in your professional work. You didn't start as a photographer or videographer. You actually went into board gaming and then started to learn the craft from there. Is
yes,
that what? Wow, that
exactly.
is
Yeah.
amazing. You look like you've been doing this for decades.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I started 3 years ago. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. That is amazing. I mean, yeah, the impression to us, your followers, is that you've been doing this professionally.
For a long,
But
long time.
That's also a great sort of inspiration because it kind of tells people that you can do this yourself. I know what you meant where when you look back at that first video that you made and you want to cringe. I remember the first ever episode of Variable Play Open Game Night, and it took maybe 3 hours of me repeating the same intro. It's
Yeah.
like I'm going like, why did I choose variable play? It's so hard to say.
Everything else.
And then my
Uh,
name rolls with it, and there was a lot of V in it. And it's like, wow. And but yeah, I know what you mean by at the beginning it feels very weird, but you're right. As you progress, you do progress in your craft. And that's a good way to look at things. Like, I just want to improve a little bit. I don't need to improve drastically. I don't need to shoot
Everything,
for the stars and be perfect right away.
Mhm.
Just
slowly.
improving one step at a time. And now I seriously thought you're like a cinematographer for Star Wars or something.
Oh no,
that
no way.
was like, oh, as his hobby, he's into board gaming. That's kind of
Yeah, no,
the
no, no.
impression
Yeah.
that we
No.
have.
The impression is that it is something that you do professionally and just integrated board games into it.
Mhm.
It turns out that you are into board games and integrated the cinematics afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. I breathe like all happened at the same time because I was in science before, so this was purely a hobby. Photography in general was a hobby.
Mhm.
And then when I really started liking it, board games just happened to be there too.
Right.
So,
Subject
so it
matter.
kind of evolved together. Like I started, outside of
Okay.
work, we started doing like lifestyle photos, started doing like weddings and stuff. So it kind of just grew together.
Okay. Okay. So you were able to practice the craft also
Alongside.
at the field. Okay. Okay. That's good. That's good. All
You
right.
mentioned
So
earlier,
you're still human.
yeah. You mentioned earlier when we were talking about some of the other games that you have like storyboards in mind. Like, so when you, let's say, come across a title that you wanna do a feature on, like what is your process? Is it like you kind of decide or how you want to do the shots, or maybe walk us through how you go from start to end with any particular title as an example?
Um, so I think with the cinematics, it always starts with a song. Like I mentioned with the Street Masters, I heard a song, and I knew it was going to pair well with a particular type of game. So usually the song I listen to like hundreds and hundreds of times, and it'll be able to just help me map out, how to start us off and how to end it. Because I think the one biggest question I always have is what's the big hook for this video? Because like I said, I always try to introduce one new technique. So that kind of is what motivates me to, pair with the song. Like, okay, what can I do to make it look really cool? Should I do this really cool, transition as it just flows into like one of the miniatures? And I'm always thinking about that, going to like the storyboard. So that's what drives the story every time. And then in terms of the story itself, it usually follows a general format. Like I know the cinematics kind of just, at your face and just throwing all these clips back and forth. But if you follow it, it actually goes from setup to play. So every game always starts with like general setup. I always start off with the box, and then it starts unveiling different components depending on which game it is, and then it'll go into like this main board goes first, and then it'll go into like these components go on the board, and these cards go over here, So always follows that general story, and then it usually wraps up with like, okay, well, how are these things being played? And then I'll just make it, look a little bit more fancy with different mechanics instead of just picking up a card. It follows the camera. The camera just follows the hand picking up the card and then dropping it down. It makes it really dramatic. So
Right.
mm,
I want to share with our viewers, like, because you just mentioned miniatures, and I think this one, I think, exemplifies kind of like your, like what you just said there. So just, it's also just under a minute. So everyone, here we go.
Whew.
So there you go. There you go, guys. I mean, it as you've seen in the video, you did a setup, you sort of showed the components, you went to the board, then to the player boards, then even without necessarily telling people verbatim with like words, you were able to sort of convey to people how it might play, how things kind of look, and how what is the feeling of the game. That's amazing. That's amazing to be able to sort of compress that visually and sort of give to a certain degree, subliminal message of like how this actually feels like as a game. And then people can come in now sort of with more interest and more open about learning about the game. And
Now,
I
they
think that
only
was
kickstart the game to come with a smoke machine and the dagger.
Ruel says hi. Hello, Ruel.
hey, well, thanks for
there's-
being here.
Can you see the comments, Tim?
Yes, I can.
Good. All right.
Yes.
For the others, maybe we're gonna ask the questions later after a few questions that we need to ask Tim. And I think Ron has another question for you. But I like the cards when it did this quickly. And
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
one part I had in mind too. Like when I mentioned, like when I hear the song, I hear like that echo, and I was like, this echo would be really well if it, because that character is a rogue, like an
Yeah.
assassin character. So I was like, okay, this would be really cool if she had like a really interesting shadow effect. And then that's what I did. I had it kind of created this whole duplicate mirror image, and then going back,
That's
so I
so
can like
good.
hear and see those things as like listen to the song.
I liked how you had probably your hand touching a token and dragging it across the board, but it was the board that was the one that was panning. So like it was just following along with your hand, and like that's a very unique shot that I wouldn't have thought of, and it just grabs your attention because it's very unique.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I
And-
like really try
and I
to
think-
choose like different things like that. Even like a simple shot, because normally our board games are on the table, and that's how we play it, right? But like one way I try to make it interesting is just to, like you said, just like pan it through like with the board going above the table, or like moving the board game cover and like moving it across as it like reveals the board. So, yeah, thank you.
cool. I mean,
Ron, you have your second question?
sorry.
Got lost.
Yes.
No worries.
Can I actually
Too
don't
early
have
for Tim.
this.
Too late for
Yes.
Okay. What is?
Go ahead.
Because we see that you really take great. One thing that we really love, me and Ron, is the way that you do your composition for your shots. It's really good, and hopefully we could do that at some point in our lives. But we would like to
Oh,
ask.
Yeah. So thank you, Denmark, for reminding me. So for you, what is my question was more of like
What is composition? And
how
do
you
do you apply it to board games?
we've seen how you've sort of a composition is a photography or cinematography term where you're you're not just taking a photo, you're sort of arranging things. And so in your perspective, like, what is your take on board game composition, and how are you sort of, what is going on in your head when you're constructing your piece,
Yeah.
uh, especially for static things like that, before you even go into animations and whatnot.
For video or for photo or both?
For I guess we can start with photos, because I think that's a more accessible things where people can start, and then from there, like what you mentioned, you can start to hear the sound and apply like a movement that again conveys something, and I think it will come back to composition. But so with photos, or at least framing things, how do you start?
Um, so typically, I feel like composition has evolved. When I first started, it was just about one component, looking at one component and then kind of filling in all the negative space with different accents. So, for example, one early game I started with was Archmage or Spirits of the Forest too, Spirits of the Forest, and it was just individual like nature components like a leaf or something. So then with that leaf, I would put it on top of a real leaf, and so not only do you get scale because our miniatures, like if you have a blown up photo of it, you can't really tell the size, right? But then if you put
Right.
a real life object underneath it or surrounding it, then you can kind of tell, okay, this is actually really small compared to this leaf, and then I'll fill it in with like nature and stuff. So to start with, I think that's what I did with composition. I focused on one component, just one, and then either token or miniature, and then fill it in with negative space.
Mhm.
And as it evolved, it kind of just started becoming something where, you focus on a set of components that work together. So nowadays, it's not just one token or one miniature, but rather it's a miniature plus like different parts of the game that will work with it. So if it's a miniature that's like a warrior in a like a PvP class or something, and then maybe I'll mix in like different attack tokens or like health tokens right beneath it, so it's not just empty, and that way you get more of the board games. But that's more so on like
Right.
the creative side. And then if you're focusing, because there's like three different types of photography now for board games. There's not just a creative that kind of grabs your attention, but there's also product photography that they put into like retail. There's also lifestyle
Mhm.
photography, which is like on websites and stuff too. So depending on what you're looking at, the compositions are going to change, right? And then, like for
Mhm.
example, if you go into product photography, now you want to see everything. You want to see all the
Right.
individual components, and typically with that, I'll start with like one board and then one box, and then I'll fill in all the negative spaces with the cards, miniatures, tokens, unique player boards and stuff like that. So it definitely depends on what type of style you're taking. And then the last one, just to be really quick on it, the last one, lifestyle photography. This one, you want the person that's viewing the photo, typically it's like an interested consumer, to feel like they're actually playing the game. So now the composition is more so like a first person point of view. So cards are kind of in
Mhm.
front of the camera, and then behind it you'll see like a little blurred background of like the board, and it's much more simpler than the other two, but it's much more immersive at the same time.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I remember when I was learning in a bit of photography back in the day. I know what you meant there, where you kind of have focal points on the image, or
Mhm.
like what you're constructing. And if the focal point is, let's say, the warrior, as you've mentioned, but then you want the viewer's eyes to sort of move along the image and sort of
Mhm.
give them a journey of which why certain photographs are more interesting, or certain compositions are more interesting than others. It's because your eyes actually kind of move around, because it kind of pulls you in towards the image or pulls you
Yeah,
out. So
like leading
eventually you
lines.
yeah, so leading lines, or even just on the components and what you mentioned, where you have a bit of depth of field, where I can see kind of the cards, maybe a blurred middle ground, and sort of what I'm looking at, but it gives you that perspective of space, right? That you're actually part of the, you as the viewer is actually part of the image. You're just
Mhm.
sort
Right.
of in seeing in between,
Yeah,
and
you
I
guys
Like
already know the
especially
terminology already. Leading lines, see that? Like I don't have to say anything about that. You guys already know about that.
a little bit, a little bit. And I like the when you let me quote you on that, because on one of your videos, I think you were also talking about composition, and like one of the first steps you mentioned there was about the Gordon Ramsay,
Mhm.
where what you put on the plate is reflecting of what you want to show other people. So it's kind of the same thing with composition. What you put in frame is what you've phrase there is reflective of you. So when you want to take a photo of a game you just played, and there's tissue and
Chips.
ketchup and chip. It
Sitting on
kind
the
of
table.
also
Yeah.
it while their focal point is there, there are sort of elements around that kind of
Accent.
sort of removes the eye of the viewer away from the focal point. So I think that's kind of where you work on composition. But I have a question for you. How do you keep everything so straight?
Yeah. You mean like with like product photos?
Yeah, it's like it's like measured in millimeters, and it's so
Yeah, everything looks so leveled.
Yeah. I try to do. I'm
So
organized.
extremely OCD when it comes to it. So for most of the time when I'm taking pictures, it's not actually taking the photo. It's me like moving each one by one. I even use like tweezers to like
Oh my
make
gosh.
sure it's like straight as
Whoa.
possible. So,
wow.
Wow.
Okay, now we understand how. Because for the life of me, my hand cannot arrange them in that manner. No way.
Yeah.
So if you
But
want to
now
take
when you send,
BG photography,
Yeah,
major
it's like you see a
requirement
photo,
is
it's quick, right?
tweezers.
You kind of just glance through it. But in reality, what goes into it is like hours and hours of just kind of just meticulously putting each thing one by
Wow,
one, stacking it, and then they
tweezers
fall
on
over
that
because I
one.
breathe, and then like that air kind of just like blows off the all
oh
the
no,
stuff. You have to redo everything again. So
Wow.
most of the time it's just troubleshooting that.
Hi Jake,
wow,
thanks for joining.
wow. So
So
so you're
so
actually
much detail.
going through in detail, arranging everything. So you have a vision in mind.
Hmm.
And this is their sort of arrangement of how I want things to look. And now you go through the painstaking process of setting up the set, right? And
Exactly
then
how it is in his mind. Exactly how it
that
is.
is amazing and impressive and a lot of patience.
Yeah.
Mostly
So-
patience. It's mostly just patience. That's all.
All right. Okay.
Cool.
Since Clint opened it up earlier, he said, "Can the same level be achieved by using your mobile phone?" Maybe we'll get to the next question. What do people who would like to start in this board gaming photography hobby or side hobby? What lights, gear, software do you use in making your content?
Hmm.
You said earlier that you started with your phone, so
Hmm.
like usually when we play games and to record the games that we've played, we would take a picture of, of that game, and what would be your advice for us? What lights? Maybe we could bring a small light or gear, whatever
Yeah.
can we bring?
Yeah, to quickly answer Clint's question too. I started on my phone too, so you can do, especially now. Before I started with it was the iPhone 6 Plus, but now we can do like slow motion in like 240 FPS for video. So you can get really, really slow motion. Even actually 240 FPS is even slower than my actual DSLR nowadays. So these
Mhm.
things are pretty crazy nowadays. So not only can you start on your phone, but you can also do really nice portrait mode photos too. So if before you like, dive into invest into all the gear and stuff, I would definitely see if you're interested more so in like taking pictures, and if you have fun with that, then yeah, definitely invest. But if I were to go back now, knowing what I know now and not buying things randomly, lighting is probably the best one. I would probably invest it first if you're interested in photo and video. The light I'm using now is a very, very fancy one. It's called the Aperture 120D. But that one, you don't have to go to that right away. I think the very first one I started with, and I actually just recently changed because this one I've had for less time than my other one, which is like a $40 one off of Amazon. As long as you have like a diffused light and a softbox, that's gonna work because that actually worked all the way up until I started doing sponsored videos too. So I use that
Right.
for actual client work, and it's just a $40 light. As long as you have a big softbox, you're set.
Right
Mhm.
there. Someone just bought a softbox. Dwayne bought a softbox, a ring light, and some tweezers.
Oh, cool! Perfect.
After
Yeah.
watching Tim's
Ring
videos.
lights are actually
Yeah.
very readily available around us, so
This
they're just everywhere.
Desky has
Yep.
everything that you mentioned except the vision. That's
Yeah.
what he was saying.
It
It's
takes
like-
time. It takes time. Like you watch my first video. Trust me. Like there's no vision there. So it takes time.
But I think there was something that you were looking at. It wasn't just you weren't just as practiced after been doing it for 3 years. It's an inevitable thing that you just become better and better and better at what you do, especially with how you're doing things. Where I just want to improve a little bit. I just want a new feature, like the previous video we showed. I want to learn how to do fire effects.
Yeah, exactly.
Smoke,
So-
smoke works too.
Smoke
that-
and fire
that-
effects.
That
Let's
mirror
go.
thing. That was so
I do
cool.
Need
wish
smoke
shadow
effects,
effect
get a
there.
real smoke machine.
Oh, yeah, that one too. I had to make it really dramatic. So
All right.
Nice.
So I think this was asked earlier on, but maybe we could let's set an what do you call this? Maybe you're in a cafe or you're playing with your family and you really like this game and you want to share it with people. Because the reason why we had you as our guest, because we know you're gonna be good at this, is because we typically take pictures of the games that we do, and sometimes when you stroll to Instagram and your Instagram, people just skip over it, and you just mentioned earlier you want people to stop and just notice your picture. So for a typical tabletop advocate, right, who just played a game and would like to make an awesome shot, what would be the thought process? I know it's not gonna be like a mind blown thing that you're gonna overthink things, but maybe just if you're on the board game cafe and you just want to take a good shot, what would be your thought process as for a creative photo or video with using just your phone? Maybe you can share a few tips on that one.
yeah, the one question I ask myself every single day before I take a photo is how can I make this different? And even if I was in a board game cafe, actually one of the games that I've been doing recently is Chai. You heard about this one?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, we previewed it the
The
very
one you
first.
Yeah, that
Yes.
one's first. Yeah. So that one, is perfect because in a cafe, like you probably have access to like tea or coffee. So like what I would do is to incorporate real life elements into that. That's one way to make it different because what everyone's gonna do is to kind of just stop and take a picture of actual gameplay. But then that when it becomes saturated, so that's why I always ask myself, how can I make this different? So then I would try to introduce like showstoppers. So what you could possibly do, if the components can take it. Usually my components are pretty destroyed because I like do really bad things to them. But but like for example,
Oh.
like these little T tokens. Grab one. So like these T tokens, they float. And so when I found out that they float because they're like wooden chips, and that like changed everything because then I took a photo of this like just suspended in actual tea water, and that looks way more immersive, way more thematic than just putting it on the table. Even though that's how we would play it, it depends. Like I said, it depends on the type of photo that you're taking. If it's for Instagram, you want people to stop scrolling, then you have to take a photo that is going to be different. So I always ask myself that question, like how can I change this up, or how can I make this in a way that's unconventional? Much easier said than done. That's why I'm always struggling with that
Right.
question all the time.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
definitely one thing I try to wrap my head around before taking a photo too, especially if you're doing it nonchalantly in a cafe. Then yeah, definitely think about how you can incorporate real life elements. Think about if you can place it separately from the game table, or just get a different angle. Maybe like everyone's gonna do it above. Maybe you can do it from like below. So
Nice.
Mhm.
I will point out though, for anyone that is going to try to suspend a tea leaf or any game component in liquid, please make sure it's your copy of the game.
Yes.
yeah, please make sure it's yours, not your friends, and you're gonna destroy the cards and stuff. I've lost stuff
Yes.
in the ocean too.
That
so
is a
it's
good.
bad.
That is a good
You
point,
lost
Abby.
some stuff.
Mhm.
To the
I've lost
ocean?
To the ocean.
Is that the one where you were
Oh,
shooting
no.
with cards and dice by the beach? Is that the one that got consumed by the ocean?
Yeah, I was being so dumb. So it was actually one of the games was Fireball Island, and
Right.
one of the expansions was like pirates, like a pirate themed expansion. It's like, oh, this would look so cool on the beach. So here I am taking like these components and all that stuff, and I'm putting it on the beach. But then I don't realize that waves and the tide they change, and so I'm like so stuck and focused on like the post, like, oh, this looks so cool, and the wave comes up. But then 2 seconds later, the wave goes all the way up past my legs. And so all the marbles and stuff just sink into the sand, and I lose like everything.
Oh no.
Yeah, that's bad. Definitely
Oh,
make sure it's
no.
you, as Javi said.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
That's-
All right. So if you guys have any questions, now is the time that I think Tim, can you answer some of their questions? Is that okay?
yeah,
with you?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So
if
yeah,
you have
While
questions, just type
Denmark
it here.
gathers the questions, I do have a starter.
All right,
Um,
go.
Yeah, do you have any maybe specific do's and don'ts when it comes to the like photography specifically for the board games? Like you did mention, like everyone's gonna go for an overhead shot.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe try something different. So maybe that's like an example of a don't. But
Mm-hmm.
do you have any other that come to mind?
Other don'ts. I mean, this is not to hark on anybody that does this. This is just general tips. But one big technique I see overused a lot for board game components is to kind of just take, like, for example, let's say we have like a card, right, and then you kind of just elevate it like this, right? So usually you see it above like the table surface. I usually kind of avoid that technique where you're elevating a certain component above everything else. I feel like that one I've seen since I started, and I still see it now. Like, again, nothing wrong with those that actually do it, but that's definitely, if you want to elevate your photography, like Ron said too, it's what you put on the plate, right? So if what you put on the plate is what's been done every single time, then it becomes overused and oversaturated. So you want to try to avoid common techniques like that. If you see something being done all the time, then you want to switch it up. Like, for example, for me, I'm getting tired of my own technique, which is long exposure with fire in the background. So I'm trying to push that up and trying to avoid that, so it doesn't become stale for me too. So I overuse my own techniques all the time. So I always try to stay away from it, and then maybe come back to it later with introducing something different. Maybe instead of just introducing fire in the background, maybe this time it will be like a fire floor for a different miniature or something. So I kind of just give it a little different spin every single time.
Okay.
All right. Thank
so
you.
cool. So I'm scanning the previous messages.
Here,
I think.
I found one. Let's start.
Okay,
with
go ahead.
How do you choose what music to use on your videos? It's always spot on what the subject is. I think you mentioned a little of this earlier on. Maybe you can elaborate even more.
That's a great question, Clint. It's actually, you're too kind to me because it's not always spot on. If you watch my first Chai video, I did some like super, hip hoppy beat to like a tea game. So it's not always spot on. You're too kind.
It's so zen, hip hop zen.
Yeah, exactly.
It's lo-fi hip hop.
Right?
That's
Yeah.
that will work. That will work.
But lately, it's what I'm starting to understand more is, I think so like I said earlier, I always choose a song first before diving into the board game.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to do that, unless like a publisher has like, hey, I need this video by this time, then I'll do it faster. But typically, I'll find a song that has you can hear different instruments and different beats that will go well with different games. So let's take Bloodstone, for example, that other preview that you played. That one has very hard hitting basses, and it has moments of when it kind of just stops, and you hear like the shadow, you hear like this kind of sound echoing back and forth. So those kind of techniques you can apply to different elements, like, for example, the shadow effect of the mirror images. Like when I hear those things kind of just going further away and out, you can kind of see and animate those kind of things inside the video. Or a really easy one to work on at first, what I started with first, is big beats. If you hear a song with really strong beats, those go well with like PvP based games or confrontational games or games where it's all about battle, which is typically the games that I film anyway, because those are my favorite types. So when you hear big basses, go for PvP and battle. If you hear like family themed music, then go for family themed games like for Chai. If you hear like a little bouncy beat, and actually Chai's a really good one too. If you hear like really bouncy light beat and kind of like whistling, something you kind of like whistle your own to. That's why I introduced like this little white animation going through back and forth. So it's very playful,
Yes.
like that.
And
so
I
you want to try to think
like
about echoing animations.
I like also that continuity that you did there. I mean, it's kind of like dance choreography to a certain degree, where the beat translated into some imagery or some movement, and that movement was a theme that went across the whole piece, and it was. So I'm not sure if for Chai was it an initial inspiration to have that sort of flowing
The white flowing thingy.
the white flowing thing. Was
No,
that?
actually, it wasn't. And for Chai, it was different too, because I didn't hear the song at first, because the Kickstarter was out, and then I wanted to make sure I finished it on time too. So in that case, I didn't hear the song at all. I actually looked for that song, and it took me. I went through like hundreds, almost like 800, 900 songs to hear the right one. And then when you finally hear that whistle, I was like, okay, maybe this could work. And then as I was editing it, what I kind of do first as I go through a preliminary edit is I just edit clips. You know, no animation, something fancy. I just edit clips together so they match really distinct parts of the beat. And then when I hear
Mhm.
like that whistling, I was like, you know what, something is missing here. And then that's when I filled it in with the animation afterwards. Like that comes later. All the fancy stuff always comes later. I always, start off
Okay.
with hard cuts, and then I go back and it's like, what can make this look, a little bit more interesting, a little bit more cool. Oh, okay, it's
So
a little
more of the
animation.
phrasing first.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
All right. So you mentioned editing already and how you took Chai, and this is the next question. How long did the whole process take, or how long does a whole process for you? How long does it take for you to finish a video, including shoots, edits, and what video editing software do you use or are you using?
Yeah, I thanks for the question. I'm using Adobe Premiere the entire time from beginning till now. But I think what I'm starting to learn now is when you generally understand one editing software, then you'll understand the rest because they generally follow the same principle. As long as you understand, like, oh, this is how you clip, oh, this is how you mask, then that general principle applies to like Final Cut Pro and the other software, DaVinci Resolve. And the reason I know that is because I've experimented with those other programs too. And also, you watch videos where Premiere won't always be covered as a technique. But when I watch like Final Cut Pro videos and they teach a technique down there, they teach a technique specifically on that platform, then that idea can be applied to Premiere as well. So once you learn one, you kind of learn the rest. And then in terms of how long it takes to do a video, it depends. For cinematics, they take maybe like 1 to 2 weeks for that, just for that 30, 60-second intro. But I've gotten
Wow.
to
Edit.
it now. If I need to have it done, if there's like a deadline, then I can do it in maybe like 3 days. Just
That
like,
is dedication.
it took a long time.
1 to 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Let's say like take for example, like I saw a cinematic review of Red Rising. That was like 10 minutes. So it took close to or over a week for that 10-minute video.
Yeah, that one took about a week. I've gotten them down more. Like I think I've gotten a little bit faster, and I can get them down to maybe like 2 to 3 days. But that's probably my typical average now, 2 to 3 days. They start off 1 to 2 weeks, and then depending on how big the video is, it can like there was one really big 6 creator video, kind of like a short film I did. That video itself took like months. It took like 3 to 6 months just working on it, adding in all the little fancy visuals and stuff. So it depends on the video.
That's wild.
Yeah. If it's like light editing, like a vlog, like the Shelf of Shame, then I can do it in like a day. But
Right.
no
Because
shot.
it's just
I still like that video. Seeing every box that just show up like I want that. I want that.
Yeah, see, those are much easier to edit and stuff too. So
Okay.
But I think
Uh,
I also like how you're mixing up your content where it's not all just heavy animation stuff. You have light stuff. I'm super impressed with. There's a lot of reviewers that taught Stardew Valley,
Mhm.
and there's quite a bit of rules in the game. That's the tricky part of that game. There's so many sort of small sets, but you were able to sort of take the audience, just keep them glued on the screen, and just keep them interested in shifting the camera and the angles, sort of just get them along. Because I know I'm losing you, so let me
Yeah.
bring you back. I don't. It felt like that for me, so that was amazing. Like, but yeah, how do you keep the attention, especially for reviews? I think what is your sort of idea of keeping the attention of the viewer? Because sometimes some reviewers are doing it so clinically
Mhm.
that it becomes like an ASMR to your. Like
Yeah.
some people actually sleep to Rodney explaining games.
I mean, I don't
Because
know
it's
how
just
Rodney does it for this long because he has a lot of patience because when I do tutorial videos, like sometimes I just want to cry too because it takes me like 2 weeks to put together videos. So I have so much respect for him for what he does. But I think in terms of pacing, I try to put myself in the viewer's shoes like all the time. So I will go back and watch my videos, and when I'm like rambling on for too long, I'm like, hold on, I don't even know what I'm saying. So I need to like cut it down and either like give a little pause or introduce some B-roll there. So I think for pacing, you really want to rewatch your entire video from start to finish, not only to check to make sure you have as many rolls as you can correctly, but to also make sure like in terms of pacing, like just put yourself in someone else's shoes and kind of humble yourself. Like I
Right.
don't really want to stare at myself, talk on the camera for like a minute, like maybe like 5 to 10 seconds, and then that's it. So if you want like a number, I try to pace it for every 10 to 20 seconds. Introduce something new. So
Oh,
that's
okay. All right.
That is a good pointer.
Keep that in
Yeah,
mind.
mm,
that is a good
So,
pointer.
when we do our
Cool.
vlog next week, we're gonna introduce something new every
We're
10
we're gonna
seconds.
keep shifting the camera every 10 seconds.
so hold on.
It's,
This
it's
was,
something with
Oh,
this wave
Yeah,
through the screen
we're gonna do
every,
this.
every 10 seconds.
All right. Okay. Next, a few more questions. Wait. Before that, I want to show you this one. I don't think you've read this. Tim, by the way, your video on Marvel United convinced me to take the plunge and go. Go all in.
I don't blame him. I saw the video today while we were preparing for the call to start, and yeah, it's good.
It was so
oh,
good.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love Marvel
if your
United.
followers had an uptick, we've been blasting the Philippine social media
For
with
the
your
last 4
content.
days, we were showing
No,
your how to take the best board games, board
Yeah.
game photos
Well, thank you. I
series
appreciate
for the
that.
next 4 games. All right.
And then people were like, "Are you guys featuring Tim?" No,
We're not
gonna do
confirming or
that.
we're not denying anything. Here's the question: what if you only have a white background as a setup? What are your tips to improve the shots?
No, that's a good one. I actually have a background right above me, a white background too. I actually have to do some white background shots right after this. But some tips. I would say so. Those solid backgrounds are typically really good for product photos, and product photos, like I said, are things that you're going to market to retail or are going to be on a website to essentially sell a game, right? Because creative photos are to hook people, lifestyles to give them a feel of how it plays. But then product photos work really well with one solid background. So when it comes to that, it's actually much more difficult than it seems. When you see it, it's like, oh, okay, here's a game and it's on white background. But then what's hard about it is that you have an empty canvas. You have no direction. You have no prompts. So my biggest suggestion for this is to always start with either one component or a couple components and just focus on that, and then start adding in layers to make that difference. So for example, let's say I have a couple of tokens, just a couple of tokens like this, and then afterwards maybe I can take them all out and then start spreading them around. So I really experiment a lot when it comes to solid white background photos. And then to add in a little bit more about composition too. Not only are you focusing on one component, but when you add in layers, you want to think about how are you leading your viewers in not only leading lines, but like a story for it, and how can you make the composition different. So instead of just putting it as one stationary static set of tokens here, instead maybe you can kind of curve it and give it a little edge. And then now when people are starting the photo, they're not only looking at the tint, but now they're looking at all the tint and all the structures here. And then you add in another layer, and that makes like a little shadow too. So now you have a blue curve, and then you have a purple curve, and then a yellow curve with all the tokens too. And then lastly, I would really suggest that you try a total composition photo, which is where you mix in the box and then the board and then all of the components together. When you can really work and fine tune that process of including all the components, not only will publishers be more inclined to look at it and see like, oh, wait a minute, I need some photos just like this that you can send off, but also you're honing your own skills of photography and mixing all these types of components together. Because as you all know, board games aren't just one set of tokens. There are a ton of different things, with different shapes and colors and all of that. So when you keep playing around with it and messing around with it, you're only going to get better. So
That kind of reminds me of like what most board games have on the back of the box, like a full shot of the table setup. So I guess
But-
that's like a full composition, but it's usually like an overhead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but normally, in my experience, the tendency there is normally it's like the 3D render of the game, because that's the fastest that they can build. Because normally you're gonna send it to the printer and it's not yet produced, so you don't know exactly how it's gonna look when it arrives. So
right.
the challenge for most of the time for the back of the box or even the rule book, they can't make actual sort of very visual, rich photos because they haven't been printed yet.
That's
Which
true.
is
I never
why
thought about that.
it is great for creative creators like Tim, where they're now sort of now taking the physicality of those games, capturing them, and it's really very useful for publishers and designers. Even whenever we see other people sort of take photos of our games,
Mm.
it's something sort of quite exciting. Say, hey, that is a very nice way to look at it,
Yeah.
I'm sure they enjoy all of the creativity that you guys are making.
All
Oh,
right.
thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
Maybe last three. Just
All
go
right.
Go.
for that. All right. Here's one of those. Any tips on how to take pictures quickly before or after playing a game to avoid other players waiting while you're doing your thing?
Yeah. No one take their turn.
Yeah. That's a valid question because I feel like I've practiced that, with my own family and friends when I play games with them too. So I try to be really quick. Portrait mode on your phone, blur out the background. That's the easy way to
Oh.
get things done. So what I usually do is kind of just lifestyle photos for that one, right? So a really quick one, right? Have cards in your hand, have portrait mode here, and then bring it up close to a set of components, and then kind of just take pictures like that. So think about what you want to focus on, not just the entire board, like I said, but focus on individual components. Like, what are you trying to say here? Because then it can match up with, like, let's say for Instagram, it can match up with your captions. Like, oh, I want to talk about this particular mechanism in sight, and so I want to highlight this card right here. And so just focus on that card. Use your hand for lifestyle. Put portrait mode on your phone, and then blur the background and put it next to like the scoring board or something. So that's a quick way to just get something done quick and easy.
All right.
Nice,
Maybe
nice. I
this
think
one
I think we're yeah. So everyone who's watching, we're gonna look
And
at your Instagram
who has
and share it.
IGs.
Instagram and Facebook. We want to
Yes.
see
You
those.
all have a homework for next episode.
I
Maybe
want
we
to see
could.
tag barrel play. I want to see.
yes, yes.
We're
And I
gonna
think
combine
Tim,
this.
you're also reacting to create the creations of your fans, right? The people that subscribe to your channel, they also submit content to you, and
Mhm.
you
Yeah, because we did
sometimes react
a
to.
contest recently, and it's crazy how good people are. It's like not in a bad way, but like they learn so fast, way faster than me. And like to see them take like really really good photos and so many people be involved. It's like I'm glad the board game community has grown into the photography side as well, because when I started it was just a couple people. And then now, like over 60 to 80 people submitted photo entries for the last photo contest, and it's crazy.
Wow.
They're so good. Like all of them are so good. I was like, wow, this is insane.
Maybe this last two. These two questions we can combine. Uh,
Mhm.
what is the most complex game you've played and shot? And what was one game you enjoyed playing but never got to make a video of?
Oh, okay. Thank you for your question. So I think most complex game. The most complex game lately that I can think of is probably Sight. In terms of product photos, that was a massive, massive project because there's so many expansions involved. And
Right.
when you do games that have a ton of expansions, not only is it difficult to just do the base game itself, but now you have to do the expansions individually, and then you have to mix in the expansions with the base game, and you have to not only understand how to play the game too, and learn it and learn such a complex game, but to also like photograph them, individually and put them all together. And that one for sure was the most complicated game I've ever played and got so far. I think actually to add on to a played one too, it was probably most complex game I've played. Dwellings of Eldervale is probably one of the ones that I can think of.
That thing's huge.
Yeah, that one was really complicated to learn and to make a video for a tutorial as well. So
All right, Javi. Last question.
Yeah, so we talked about your earlier content, you being the cinematics, reviews, photography, like your other videos, like the Shelf of Shame, and other personal content that you are posting on your page. For those that are fans, for those who frequent your YouTube site, what do you hope your audience takes away from the content that you've been sharing? Like, what do you want them to what do you want them to embody, or the message from all of your content?
oh, that's a really good question. I would say just enjoying the game, because that was always the intention to begin with. when I started with tutorials, it's always about cutting out, as much as I can, make it as short as I can to get everyone, to the table and play. So that idea with the tutorial still rings true with the cinematics. It's like you might really enjoy this game because it looks hopefully really good and it plays, as well as it looks. So that's always the idea, is to enjoy the game quickly and thematically.
All right.
Also, I missed one more question. I missed the other half of the question that you put up there, Denmark.
A game that
Sorry.
you enjoyed but never got to make a video of.
Oh, okay. Aside from Street Masters with the whole warehouse effect, I would say game that I enjoyed. It's probably Marvel United actually. I wanted to make a cinematic on it, but with the whole Marvel IP, it is intimidating. Not only because like there's such a high standard, like these are Marvel heroes, and I don't think I'm there yet to make a video that good to match that, that Marvel IP. But hopefully I can do it, in the future, make something like a little more cinematic with all the components involved. But that's going to be a major undertaking, because I feel like you would need animations for like Iron Man. Like you want to see the repulsor, or hope you want to see like an earthquake effect, and that would be a massive project.
Desky is
and-
saying he hopes you try combining your visual skills with Ian O'Toole's works soon.
Collab.
I'm not totally familiar with O'Toole, but I'm definitely not going to see what you mean.
So-
Ian O'Toole on Mars, if I'm not mistaken, Escape Plan. That's his art.
Oh, okay. Sorry for those. Okay.
Yeah, and so, and also for going back to Marvel, I think, and kind of connecting back to your choice of music, one of the biggest challenges normally for creating any video content, as soon as you start using music, then you go through all the copyright and challenges of like just using the appropriate music that it's
Right.
and licensing and all of those. So
Mhm.
as soon as you hit Marvel, you can't not use the
Right.
their music. So it has to be licensed somehow, and they have to like somehow sponsor the creation. If you just create it on your own, I've heard some sort of Marvel like open source sort of Creative Commons audio clips, but you still know it's like they're still gonna flag that.
Yeah, that's what's hard. It's like if you want to use all the sound effects for like his beam shooting out, like
Right.
it just becomes really hard with copyrighted music and everything too.
Yes.
And
People are
also to add
suggesting.
on, the Ian O'Toole question too. I've never done a space theme yet, so I would definitely love to try something.
There you go. That's O'Toole's work. Black Angel Clinic, Rococo Pipeline,
Oh, okay, got
on
it.
Mars, Carnegie, Iberian. All right.
Gotcha.
Okay. There are a lot of Ian O'Toole fans.
I think there are a lot of Ian O'Toole fans. Maybe we could wrap this up, and this is the last question that would help us wrap this up. Are there any channels or other creators that you look up to, or any recommendations as good resources also, if they're gonna
Yeah,
start taking photography?
So on the photography side, if you don't already know, Peter McKinnon, he is my mentor. He's the one who like pretty much taught me everything. So if you know Peter McKinnon, you definitely subscribe to him, watch his videos. I've learned everything from him. Another one, Parker Wallback. He's another cinematographer, really, really big cinematographers, these two. I've learned a ton from him too, and he also gives tips on like wedding and everything. So he shows like in the field type techniques. For cinematics, really good cinematic storytelling. Aiden Robbins, insane cinematic storyteller. Also, they're all like really big YouTubers, but Aiden Robbins, I've learned a lot from him. Not only does he teach like editing techniques, but he also does like cinematic vlogs, which I would love to do eventually when we can go out and stuff. Those are probably like my three biggest ones. Just gonna rapid fire a couple other ones. Brandon Lee, he's amazing. Brandon Wolfel, photographer too. So those are all in terms of like the photography side, but board game side. You've probably ever heard, you watched some videos from my channel, but Quackalo, Justin Quackalo, he's amazing. Before You Play, who was on the show just recently too, they're amazing. Sam from Lord of the Board, like they're all like really good friends and they're amazing people. So I'm sure you've seen those content creators already because they are much bigger than I am.
Well,
No, you're
and
big.
also from what you've mentioned, I think the level of board game content is also sort of stepping up. Like People are paying more attention about the quality of their video,
That is the plan.
the lighting,
Plan is revealed.
Yes.
right?
The world.
Yes, and because of that, people are understanding, are more engaged. You are able to convey learning the game much faster, and there's so many games, and it's so hard to actually learn all of these, and that's why it's so amazing for like Rado and his team, and now before you play, it's also part of it,
Mm.
and the rest of the sort of high fidelity content creators. It's really sort of bringing up the hobby to a more commercialized, more wider net, which is, I think it's great, and I think the more people learn from you, the guys like you, Tim, and the more people that can create content like this, the more people will reach, and hopefully in the process we'll get more gamers, and then in the day we just want more people to play with.
Yeah.
More people to play with us.
And more people to play with.
Right, too. That's always been the goal. It's like, it can't go backwards, right? So
Yeah.
like when I was thinking about it, when I was doing cinema, it's like, I hope one day this is like a standard for the industry, like across the board, not just for me, but from everybody. And that'd be amazing because once those kind of visuals are there, it's kind of hard to go back and
Right.
like backwards and just like not just watch them do stuff, but just like reduce the quality of what's already been done. So now once that quality is set, you can only go up. And I hope that just translates across the entire board game industry. It'd be really nice.
Yes.
All right.
That's the direction it's going to.
So Tim,
Yeah.
where
very much
can
so.
they find you?
You can find me at Tim Chuon on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, all of those. Those are
Oh, okay, just same name. Tim
Same
Chuon.
name.
Yes.
Yeah, make it easy.
Team Chuon on Instagram, YouTube, and also he has a Medium
Yes.
website.
I actually used to
Medium.com.
be my original name for the channel was B-roll and board games before I made it.
B-roll. Oh, cool.
And that really isolated me in only one area because
Right.
I got like a comment saying, "Oh, I did a backpack review one time," and then someone said, "Oh, do you do B-roll? Are you B-roll in backpacks now?" So everything.
Yeah, I think having your own brand is such a powerful tool nowadays, especially with everything being very digital. So I hope everyone here has learned a few tips or two and have been
I know I
inspired to
have.
create
Thank you,
content
Tim.
online.
Thank you so
No,
much.
thank you for having me.
Super thank you,
Yeah,
Tim, for
thank you.
inspiring, keep creating your awesome content. We will be following and sharing.
Yeah.
And if you guys have not yet subscribed to Tim's channel, please do so, and share the love and spread the word about his great content. And again, thank you everyone for joining us today. I hope that was fun for you. Again, Tim, super thank you for
No,
joining
thank you.
us.
Thank you for taking the time to be in our show.
Yes.
For waking up so early in the morning.
To do
Yeah,
this
that
live.
too.
Midnight too. So sorry to keep that up so late too.
Oh, this is fine for us. This is how
is
Ruel
normal.
normally catches us. He calls us his board game tapsilog breakfast.
Breakfast.
It's kind of like the Filipino breakfast. All right.
All
So
right.
thank you everyone for joining us, and until next time.
Yep, keep
Bye-bye.
gaming.
Thank you.
Play more games. We're gonna play Tim's B-roll. Then we're gonna sign out.
Oh,
All right.
okay,
See you,
okay.
everybody.
Gotcha,
Thank you,
gotcha.
Tim. Bye-bye.
Bye.